Hi, I'm Joy McKnight, Technology Editor at The Banker, and I'm here today with Julian Skan, who's Accenture's Managing Director and in charge of overseeing the Fintech Innovation Lab here in London, and Alesis Novik, who's Chief Technology Officer at Aimbrain, one of the Fintech startups. So, Julian, this is the fourth year of Accenture's Fintech Innovation Lab here in London. Can you tell us a little bit about the successes so far and maybe also mention some of the companies that have been through the program?
Sure. So globally there are 75 odd alumni of the four programs, and we've had 50% of the companies that have been through the program have got POCs or more, proofs of concept, with banks. Some of the notable stars so far have been Digital Shadows, who are experts in exploring areas of the dark web and looking at security breaches. They've had huge success in the US and the UK. AMP came through the Hong Kong program, specializing in micro lending, and they're also running in the UK out of this building as it happens. CB Insights are part of the analytical tracking the fintech industry itself. They've had a huge amount of traction actually globally and particularly in the UK. And from last year's UK program, Duco, who specialise in improving the massive amount of reconciliations that banks need to do at huge cost, they've had a lot of traction in the UK investment banking market.
Okay. And this year you've taken on 15 new companies. Can you tell us a little bit about the selection process and maybe mention a couple of the companies you're working with this year?
Sure. We took the step this year to expand the number of companies because the industry told us they wanted to work closely with a greater number than the usual 6 or 7. So we ran 3 streams focusing on investment banking, retail banking, and then tech for solutions which are really looking at hardcore technology items that are applicable right the way across the banking sector. The selection process was pretty harsh, Alesis may agree. A Dragon's Den environment where if they got down to the last 15 per sector, they had to get through to the 5. We had 42 odd specialist bankers in the room for that particular area. So it's quite an intense process with a big focus on who's really going to benefit from the experience, as opposed, actually to who has got the best formed idea. We saw a great deal more maturity this year in terms of the companies understanding the banking industry and their value proposition. And I mean, companies like Aimbrain are a very good example of being much more ready to talk to the banks than what we've seen in previous years. A couple of other examples, PayKey, interesting payments proposition that looks to provide in a text environment a payment experience for me paying you very, very easily that could actually leapfrog even an Apple Pay proposition, for example, and some really cool stuff in an area that doesn't get a lot of exposure in the tech area of how you make documents completely electronic and get into the workflow issues that banks have from the document rather than trying to impose workflow on the top. So very interesting stuff.
Wow, it sounds very, very interesting. And Alesis, Aimbrain is one of the 15 that will go through the 12-week program. Can you tell us a little bit about your company and your idea, how it came about? I hear you're going to try to kill the password.
Of course. So Aimbrain is developing a mobile-focused biometric authentication platform which helps banks and payment processors know if their customers really are who they say they are. So the platform currently consists of 3 types of biometrics, which is behavioral, facial, and voice. With the behavioral biometric, we track not what the user enters, but how they enter it. So we look at things like touch pressure, typing speed, as well as device movement. The facial and voice biometrics are fairly self-explanatory. Take a picture, say a few numbers, get authenticated. So the idea came about from my co-founder, Andrew Sutas, working at ARM, the microprocessor designer, where he saw that biometrics will be one of the biggest drivers of the future of smart devices. We then set out to develop an authentication platform that would work on any device that is currently on the market.
Excellent, that sounds really interesting. And what do you hope to gain from being a part of the Accenture program?
So our main goal is to better understand the areas in the financial sector where our solution would add the most value, as well as validate the opportunities that we already have. So one of the example areas that we're looking at is mobile banking. So we start tracking the user as they begin using their application and provide a score representing the likelihood of it being the correct user at any point where it is needed. For example, when they're trying to transfer money to a new payee. So while we are already trialing this solution with some of the banks, we really want to better understand the less obvious opportunities, such as internal applications or the private bank. One of the goals of the programs is to help us collaborate with banks and have conversations that would lead to proof of concepts and trials.
Okay. And then what do you think are the biggest challenges for a fintech startup today?
So from my perspective, the biggest challenges SMEs face when trying to enter the financial area are regulatory and the stagnation. This is actually where Accenture's Fintech Innovation Lab is extremely helpful. They help us navigate the regulatory complexities and point out where the financial institutions can be less flexible. This helps us both improve our business model and our propositions to those financial institutions.
Excellent. And Julian, what would you say is the sort of the biggest challenges that you see fintechs are facing today?
Well, I absolutely agree with Alesis's points. I would add that the sheer complexity of the decision making in banks is a real barrier, because you can think you've got real traction and then find an objection from another part of the bank that needs to be dealt with. So that makes it a very long process.
Well, great. Thank you both for your time today.